François Hollande has told us the state of emergency that it was announced last night remains. Borders remain closed, and a number of measures put in place to up France's state of alert, which was already pretty high.
Absolutely. It was almost at the highest level. It is at the highest level right now. A state of emergency, extraordinary measure for extraordinary times. It was passed in the 1950s, and since then, there's really only been 3 occasions on which there has been a state of emergency declared in France. The most recent being 10 years ago, in the wake of the urban riots, the violence that swept across the suburbs of Paris and other big cities. A state of emergency. You don't take it lightly. A state of emergency. You have to have a situation in which there is a sense of imminent peril, a grave danger to national security, events that can be characterized as a quote, and this is in the wording of a state of emergency, a public calamity. And they give obviously bolstered, heightened powers to the president and to the authorities to basically regulate people's movements, to create protection and security zones, to basically implement house arrests or restraining individuals that might be suspicious or deemed a potential threat to public security. They extend all the way through, actually, being able to go through someone's home, searching people's homes. They extend to media as well. Now, in this case, obviously, we're not being censured just yet, but technically under a state of emergency, you can ensure the control, in its wording, of press and radio. So it's a broad range of measures. It's not indefinite. Under the state of emergency law, it can only last for 12 days. And what's interesting is if you want to prolong a state of emergency, you can only do so by passing a law. That has been done in the past, in the case of Algeria, where a state of emergency was declared. And it was extended for 6 months, but it has to be through a legal channel. So as of now, if there are plans to extend this or a need to extend it, perceived need beyond 12 days, it will have to be juridically and legally all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. But specifically here in Paris today, what we are seeing is, yes, the shutdown, partial or full of many metro stations, many bus stops, not entire lines. Most of the intersuburban trains are all running as normal, an exception of 1 or 2 lines. But the metros, many of the stops, especially stations, especially the Place de la République. There's a big stop there, which is a junction of many lines in the capital, right sort of in the nexus, in the epicenter of where a lot of these attacks occurred. That was closed as of just before I came to air, at least. You have the partial or full closure of a lot of other public facilities, from libraries to schools to museums to food markets to gymnasiums. You name it. City Hall, Paris City Hall, bolstered security there. As well as each arrondissement in Paris, each district, of which there are 20, they have their mini city halls. Security has been bolstered in each of those cases. As we heard François Hollande announce, a deployment immediately of 1,500 additional soldiers in the capital, presumably on top of already the security that has been upped across the country in the wake of the Charlie Hebdo attacks. So we're going to be seeing, especially in the short, medium term, a much more heightened and visible presence of security forces, police, even army on the streets of Paris and the greater Paris region. For now, I will mention that for people watching this who might be having plans to travel to France or are in France, perhaps as tourists going to be leaving France, flights, trains are operating normally, but because of the stepped up and bolstered border checks and security checks at stations, at airports, you can expect delays, presumably on a lot of those forms of transit. But that said, most air carriers and trains are reported to be continuing their service as normal. Even certain areas right now around the site of the initial attacks, as we saw earlier with our reporter Ben Barnier, the police have lifted the absolute cordon sanitaire. They've listed that. People are able to walk around in the areas, but still very much a sense of Paris in a semi-lockdown sort of state today.
As you were just saying,